Our own Mo Hyder has been following this since the beginning. He joins us right now from Korean Veterans Boulevard this morning. Mo, you've seen this develop from start to where we are right now. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, Rebecca, we're at the 2nd Avenue South and Korean Vets Boulevard. And of course, yeah, I saw this from the beginning. This happened just a little bit before 6:30 this morning. I just heard that loud explosion. I can feel, the shelter that was above me just vibrate and shake, even the ground shaking so vigorously, even though we were so far from it. I was just right across the street from Nissan Stadium. And if you just look right behind me, this is where the media staging center is. The smoke has calmed down significantly. I can't really see it. Looks like this area, a lot of people have moved away from it, but this explosion did happen near 2nd and Commerce. Of course, that's normally a very popular area with tourists and even people that live here. Don Aaron from the Metro Police Department did speak to us a little while ago. He did say it's actually a good thing that it's been quiet today. People were not there, so otherwise, this could have been a lot worse. But from what we're being told, that only 3 people were injured and sent to the hospital. We also got word from the Metro Police Department that one of their officers did suffer what they're hoping is temporary hearing loss from that explosion. But that happened just a little bit before 6:30 this morning, and it was very catastrophic. Nothing like I've ever seen before. Just working on a separate assignment, and many people were not expecting this on Christmas morning. Of course, this is the last thing they wanted to see and hear, given how tough this year has been for Nashville. Mayor John Cooper even came out here to talk to us just a little while ago. He wanted to kind of try to give their mind some ease this morning. Here's a little more about what he had to say.
People in town can feel good about the professionalism of the investigation that's being conducted right now with all parties, including federal parties. And I think there'll be another briefing in about 20 minutes, hopefully with more details at that point. But for the time being, don't come to downtown Nashville. It's going to be sealed off, and every effort is going to be made to make sure that that everything is completely safe going forward. And I did tour the destruction, and we are very lucky that not more injuries. I think we're going to check and see what injuries there have been, but it's not a very populated area, but the people in the buildings adjacent mostly are fine and have been evacuated. So one more event. I don't think anybody can come to any conclusion. Just wait for the next briefing. And then again, I do know that very professional folks are moving ahead with that as quickly as possible.
Can you describe the scene yourself?
Well, so a whole lot of broken glass and trees. Insulation has been blown up into the trees. Not from the street, you can't tell a lot of structural damage, but there is a whole lot of broken glass. And then there's some broken water mains, which adds to the drama of the picture, to be sure. So, it looks like a bomb went off on 2nd Avenue. That's, an explosion, I should say, all these words. So again, it's a surprise, but want to be very complimentary to our emergency responders, including those of the state, but our police and our fire department have been doing a splendid job. And again, Christmas morning, it's unfortunate, but any other morning, I think it would have been a much worse story, to be sure, because there were just so few people out early this morning. So again, I'd stay tuned for the next briefing in about 20 or 30 minutes as more actual information will be known and not just speculation. Okay, thank you all. Appreciate it. Appreciate you all being here. I know this is taking time away from your families as well. But again, so far, property damage, and it doesn't seem like it's been that dramatically a negative personal event. And then I'm sure it'll take a while to piece all the events of this morning together.
Do you know how many buildings suffered damage?
Well, from what I saw, in terms of glass breakage, certainly more than 20. And that's just, there's a large amount of glass breakage. And then again, there are water jets in the water. So you see down here, it's dramatic. It's limited, but it is dramatic. all on the street. But it'll be a while to get the glass swept up and everything, the buildings inspected to make sure that none of them received any structural damage in all this. Okay, well, again, thank you all.
And you heard from Nashville Mayor John Cooper there. And earlier, he also wanted to reiterate to the public and the residents of Nashville and Davidson County to keep their confidence and believe in the law enforcement officials. I can see here they're working very diligently to get to the bottom of this. He also wants the people of Nashville to know to stick with their families today and still focus on Christmas and the holiday, despite how tragic this morning and this holiday has begun. Guys, I'll send it over back to you in studio.
All right, Mo, thanks so much. These are some of our earliest images right after the explosion and the immediate aftermath. You can see still an active fire earlier this morning with that black smoke plume going up along 2nd Avenue. You can see the Hooters right there on the left and the photographer just getting up to the scene. And you can see that the windows blown out even on the side of that Hooters building there, despite the fact that the explosion itself happening around the corner. So this is having a widespread impact on the area. Water coming down. You just heard the mayor talking about multiple water mains that were broken, adding to the impact of this explosion. More than 20 buildings, it appears, impacted by it, and it came from a car at 6:30 this morning. We're still waiting to hear more information as officials try to piece together exactly what happened this morning and why, right in the heart of downtown Nashville. We know that, thankfully, only 3 people so far, as we've been told, have been injured, and their injuries are not considered serious. And we keep saying, Rory, that it's amazing that it happened as early as it did on Christmas morning, and that is, of course, why we have such a low casualty count. But Phil brought up the great point earlier. Could this be luck, or could this have been by design? We just still have so many questions here with the situation.
A lot of questions left to be answered, no doubt about it, and we just have to wait and let the experts do their job. But, you know, 2nd Avenue, if you think about downtown and busy roadways, right away you think of Lower Broadway. But 2nd Avenue is probably the second most busiest section, with plenty of bars and restaurants and shops, as we've mentioned. A very busy area, actually an area that we've seen over the years kind of transform itself and adapt, and has grown. And yeah, certainly fortunate that this happened at such an early hour and on Christmas morning. But some of the witnesses, some of the stories, and some of the video that we're seeing that's coming in, and security footage that we have here, I understand, right here, look at that, of a residence there downtown, shook the camera, and you can see even parts of the ceiling coming down, just amazing. So it was a significant explosion. As we've mentioned, people felt it so many miles away from downtown, and Ben Hill and Henry here in the studio felt it and knew that that was more than just blasting. And you mentioned earlier, Rebecca, you live in an area near some construction, and you know what blasting feels like, but on Christmas morning, that's not expected.
Not at all. When it happened at 6:30 on Christmas morning, we kind of sat up and looked around, and we knew that something wasn't right, and immediately turned on News Channel 5 and saw that our crews were covering an explosion in the downtown area. Just absolutely mind-blowing. The images that we're seeing coming from 2nd Avenue downtown near Church. We are just hearing that President Trump has been briefed on the explosion as the world watches what happens in downtown Nashville. I know a lot of you are probably getting calls and texts from your friends and family members who are seeing the coverage that's being taken on national news and news channels across the world right now. Christmas morning is not a morning where we expect a lot of things to happen. This is a morning where we usually have a shorter newscast, a smaller crew. We know a lot of first responders were off and intending to spend the morning with their families. And then this at 6:30 this morning. This is video from earlier when the flames were still active. This is going to be a long investigation and cleanup with all of the damage to the buildings in the downtown area. Saw some roofs completely torn up. sides of buildings, completely rubble on the ground, trees. You can see the bird's eye view images from Sky 5. They were flying over earlier this morning, really the main damage zone. Water spewing out because we have water lines that have been damaged and an explosion of this magnitude. Amazing when you see the images, Rory, to think that all of this came from a vehicle.
Exactly, and the early reports, those witnesses saying it was an RV, a recreational vehicle. Of course, that's not confirmed as far as I know. We do know the Emergency Operations Command Center, EOC, activated. WeGo services all canceled downtown today. Not that there was, there's probably a light holiday schedule. And as you mentioned as well, our programming, typically Christmas morning, a short newscast, and then we go to some Christmas Day programming, special programming for families to enjoy. So families getting up on this Christmas, where in many areas, Christmas Eve, we saw a dusting of snow, everything looking beautiful out, very festive, a nice way to wrap up what has already been one of the most challenging years ever, and now this happens. But again, fortunately, at this point, we know no deaths reported that we know of, 3 injuries, and Rebecca mentioned one police officer suffered some hearing loss from the blast. We still don't know the timeline specifically. I'm not sure if we've heard from the Metro Police Department as to when they arrived on the scene, whether there was any kind of an announcement coming from that vehicle or nearby, how quickly they had to assess that there was danger and then back off. Phil Williams mentioned some fire crews now attempting perhaps to re-enter the area. They not only have to be careful about perhaps an additional explosion or an additional device that could be somewhere, but also structural damage to those buildings along 2nd. We see so much debris. Mayor Cooper, though, saying as far as he could see, it was more facade damage and broken windows. So we don't know about actual structural damage there. Our crew's covering this now at almost 11 in the morning, Christmas morning. We want to say Merry Christmas to you, but it is far from a Merry Christmas in downtown Nashville, especially for our first responders and for those people who live and work in this area. Huge explosion. Yeah. And I hear Mike Rose right now, our photographer. Oh, this is earlier. Mike Rose is up there earlier getting these shots. I understand Sky 5 is refueling, and we're going to have more live shots here momentarily. Rory Johnston with you, Rebecca Schleicher. Our Phil Williams is tracking his sources, as well as Nick Barris. Other crews are out on the scene gathering information. We wanted to mention Governor Lee tweeted earlier saying that we will supply all of the resources needed to determine what happened and who was responsible. Please join Maria Lee and me in praying for those who were injured, and we thank all of our first responders who acted so quickly. The White House also responding to what's happening. We have a statement from the White House Deputy Press Secretary Judd Deere, who says, quote, President Trump has been briefed on the explosion in Nashville, Tennessee, and will continue to receive regular updates. The president is grateful for the incredible first responders and praying for those who were injured. So again, a local story that is now a national story being monitored by news agencies all around the world. This explosion happened in Metro Council member Freddie O'Connell's district. That's District 19. Covers all of downtown and then parts of southeast area. And he wrote, what I can tell you, Nashville's first responders are responding to a difficult, dangerous situation with limitless courage. And dozens of my constituents just lost their homes in 19-degree weather. We will work together to get through this and rebuild. The Tennessee Titans also tweeting about this morning's explosion. The team's account said, quote, praying for our city and the first responders on the scene of the explosion this morning. Nashville has been through a lot this year. We'll bounce back together, stronger and tougher. Hashtag Tennessee Tough. The Nashville Sounds also posting on Twitter. We're praying for all of Nashville on this Christmas Day, and especially those injured in the downtown explosion this morning. We send a sincere thank you to all of the first responders doing their very best to keep us safe. And the Nashville Predators tweeting, "Thank you to the first responders and everyone helping our downtown friends and neighbors this morning. Hashtag Nashville Strong." The last time that we received statements from groups like that, from our professional sports teams and our leaders, you will recall, was back in March when the devastating tornadoes hit. Weeks later, the pandemic hit, and now as we wrap up 2020, we're dealing with what could be a potential act of terrorism in downtown Nashville. Again, Phil Williams working his sources. We know the FBI has taken over this investigation, and literally these scenes, it just looks, it's a cliche, but it looks like a war zone. It looks like something we would see in a war zone after a bomb went off. But this is downtown Nashville, 2nd Avenue. Again, our crews are out. Mo Hyder is out, Aaron Cantrell. We have Rebecca Schleicher tracking things, Phil Williams and Nick Barris, and many others. Let's go to Phil Williams now. Phil, what have you learned?
Oh, Rory, I think it's probably good to recap what we do know so far, because I am hearing from friends who are just waking up late on Christmas morning and are just shocked about what they're seeing. From what we were told from Metro Police spokesperson Diane Aaron, this morning, police were called to 2nd Avenue about a suspicious vehicle. And then at some point, that vehicle exploded. And so we were told by Metro Police that it did appear to be a deliberate act. And, of course, we were wanting to be very careful about any speculation, and we continue to be careful about speculation. And then monitoring the scanners as firefighters arrived, they became immediately alarmed about the potential for secondary explosions. Anytime you have a deliberate explosion, the basic handbook for responding to potentially terroristic events is to be aware that sometimes terrorists will plant secondary devices that are intended to harm first responders. And so we initially heard the fire department saying they were pulling back 2 blocks, and then a few minutes later being told that they were pulling back 2 more blocks from the scene. We also heard that firefighters and police were bringing in radiation detectors just to make sure that this was not some sort of dirty bomb. We have not heard any further updates on that, but by the fact that crews remain fairly close to the situation, I think it's safe to assume that no radiation was detected. We're also hearing continued conversation chatter on the scanners about the fact that there were some injuries from debris, from glass flying through the air. They're finding more of those patients as the morning goes along. And then we heard in the last 30 minutes or so that they were sending re-entry teams into this area to eliminate the possibility that anyone else could be there who's been injured. And so this is a scene that is continuing to develop. First responders are being very methodical in how they respond to this scene. And we've also noted that the FBI has taken over as the lead investigative agency on this because of the potential for terrorism. Metro Police, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation will all be assisting. We certainly would expect that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms would also be involved just because of their expertise in investigating explosive devices, bombs. And so this will be an investigation that will take days. So
absolutely,
there's a lot that is going to be happening here in the next few hours and the next few days.
And this is a prime example, Phil, of all of the training, I would say post 9/11 and beyond, the coordination efforts among all the agencies, local and federal, They really do rely on each other. The FBI, obviously, and ATF, they're going to rely on those first responders who are right there gathering key evidence. And when it comes down to trying to pinpoint who's responsible in some of these cases, and again, we're assuming that this was intentional, as it seems it was. Those are the initial reports that they do believe this was intentional. Was it an individual? Was it a group? Will they or that person claim responsibility? You know, I know the profilers are probably on the internet, social media, chat rooms, really scouring, checking, trying to get any information to see if anyone might be claiming responsibility for this.
Absolutely. And, you know, among the questions being asked, I mean, there are reports out there that we have confirmed that police are investigating that perhaps whoever was responsible for this wanted to get people away from this explosive device. Police are checking out those reports. I am waiting right now. I am told about a couple of witnesses. I am waiting for my phone to ring, trying to reach those witnesses. And those sorts of firsthand accounts will give us a greater understanding of what it is we're dealing with here. Because, you know, social media is great for speculation. It's not very good for facts. And so we are efforting right now to talk to firsthand eyewitnesses. I'm sure those people are with police right now. Police trying to gather as much information as they can, as quickly as possible, to try to determine whether this is an isolated situation or if there could be more to it on this Christmas Day.
We want to go to Rebecca Schleicher. Rebecca, we were just talking about all of the response so quickly on Christmas morning, all of the tweets from various groups, leaders in Nashville, and just regular everyday people who are coming down to try to help out these first responders.
Rory, if there's one thing Nashville knows how to do, it's to come together in the event of an emergency and really pull each other up by the bootstraps, whether it's a flood, whether it's a tornado, a pandemic, or now an explosion. Whew, this has been quite a year, but we know that Nashville will come together, and I believe in Nashville is something that everyone in the area resonates with. Our own Mo Hyder has been following this from the beginning, and in fact was across the river and felt and heard the explosion when it first happened this morning at 6:30. So Mo, what's the latest from your vantage point? I know they've pushed you pretty far away from the actual scene where we were just showing footage for your safety.
Yeah, that's right, Rebecca. You know, things have calmed down a little bit here, but, you know, things are still very much dangerous from what law enforcement is saying. They're telling a lot of people to back up. Just to give you some perspectives, we're at 2nd Avenue South and Korean Vets. The explosion happened on 2nd and Commerce, so we're still pretty close, but not close enough to see what is exactly happening right now. The smoke has cleared up, not a lot of flames. It has a very stark contrast to what we saw early this morning. My photographer and I were just close to Nissan Stadium, just right across the street from it, a little before 6:30 this morning when we heard that loud explosion and saw those flames just shoot up in the air. You could just feel the vibration in the ground and the infrastructure from where we were. A very scary scene. I've never seen anything like that since I've been doing this. It's also the look of confusion. So many people driving by, asking us questions and wondering what is going on and what's happening. What is the source of this? Keep in mind, like you guys were mentioning, this has been such a difficult year for people living in Nashville. After going through the tornadoes and the pandemic, a lot of people just wanted to just end the year and move forward on a positive note. And this is the last thing somebody wanted to do. This is supposed to be a celebratory day on Christmas morning, and this is something that people did not expect, of course. And I'm also being told that they're not recommending anybody come to this immediate area of downtown because it is going to be closed off for a while. The fire department, the police department, bomb squad, Office of Emergency Management, so federal officials, so many people are coming together to figure out what is going on and how this happened. And they're advising people to not come to this immediate area. Even K9 units have been scattered throughout the perimeter here to given better idea of, and find some more answers to help the public and help put their mind at ease, of course. Even Nashville Mayor John Cooper did say he didn't want this to take away from the holiday. He still is encouraging people to keep their confidence with the law enforcement official, that they're there to help everyone out. And he still encourages people to hug their loved ones and keep close and spend time with their family on this Christmas morning that started off with a tragedy. Back to you guys in studio.
Yeah, your